Hello, Mike from Outside Xbox here, and the keen-eyed among you will have noticed that I'm not on the Outside Xbox channel, and I'm not talking about an Xbox game. Instead, I'm talking about Gran Turismo 6, which is, as a racing fan, one of my favourite games of this year. It really is a sort of fantastic step up from Gran Turismo 5 for various reasons. One of them is the handling, which is something I wrote about at great length on Eurogamer.net earlier in the year when the GT Academy demo was released. I'm a really huge fan of the new handling model. So much more feel of the weight shifting of the car, and you know, just a much more communicative model. If you have the opportunity to play it on a steering wheel, that is absolutely the way to play it. But it's actually translated really nicely onto a controller as well. So even if you don't have the money or the permission from a significant other to stick a racing wheel in your home, it's absolutely a step up. This particular race, you'll notice I'm not actually driving at the moment, because if I tried to talk and drive I would crash. So these are actually some replay highlights from the 24 minutes of the Nürburgring challenge. It's a bit of a new take on the endurance races. Certainly in Gran Turismo 5 and Gran Turismo 4, the 24-hour races were an entire 24 hours. Not hugely practical in Gran Turismo 5 because there was no B-spec driver. So in Gran Turismo 4 you could rope in a sort of AI driver to do shifts on the driving, so you could feasibly leave your PlayStation 2 on all night and do a full 24-hour race without having to do all of the driving yourself. In GT5 you could save in between the races, but it still meant you had to do the full 24 hours of driving yourself, which is kind of tiring. I mean, not even the real racing drivers do that. So the new take is 24-minute races, and it's a really nice way to compress the feeling of a sort of endurance race into a more manageable time span. So what you get is a sort of accelerated day-night cycle, and you get all the variable weather conditions that you would get if you were playing a full 24-hour race. And it's really, really cool because, as I've said in the article that accompanies this on Eurogamer.net, this is really where all the sort of elements of Gran Turismo kind of come together. I mean, the handling model is brilliant, and it's more so in the kind of variable weather conditions, because you really have to sort of tiptoe, and as the track gets more sort of saturated, you have to react to those changes. In this particular race, I was staying out on racing hard tyres. Fuel wasn't an issue in this particular car in this race, so I stayed out on racing hard tyres, which meant that for a period during the night, which you'll see a bit of fairly soon, I was on some really sort of slippery surfaces on tyres that weren't suited for those surfaces, and you'll see some of the accidents I had, sort of clumsy spins and things, very shortly. But then you've also got this sort of day and night cycle, and that's something that not a lot of people necessarily experienced in GT5, because the endurance races didn't come until later on in the game. You really had to sort of sink a lot of time in, and here we have the sort of night racing now. You had to sink a lot of time into it, and it was actually a really, really brilliant facet of the game that was sort of kept away from the more casual players. You still have to complete the game, as it were, in order to unlock these sort of races, but Gran Turismo 6 in general has a much more coherent and much more accessible career mode, which means you're far more likely to get to that stage anyway. And if you've never tried the night racing in Gran Turismo, it really is a treat, because you get this claustrophobic feel, particularly on a course like the Nürburgring, which is narrow, it's winding. You don't quite get the same vibe at Le Mans, for example, but this sense that the blackness is kind of encroaching on your vision, and all you've got is just what your headlights are illuminating a few feet in front of you. It becomes this really terrifying experience, and particularly when the rain comes, and that's something you have to deal with in these 24-hour races as well, it's really, really scary. There you can see like a clumsy spin, because I'm trying to dice with cars in wet weather with very limited visibility. It becomes quite a lonely experience at times. I mean, there's been a lot of talk of the kind of rubber banding that goes on in GT6's AI. It's very different from previous games. The AI is still pretty dopey, but it's now got this rubber banding system that ensures you're always kind of dicing with cars. So it doesn't always work out, but it does mean that you're at the very least in the thick of a battle for the entirety of this 24-minute race. Certainly in this case, I had a few incidents here But ultimately, by the final lap, I was chasing down the leaders and was able to pass them at the very last minute. No discussion of GT6 would be complete without some mention of the microtransaction scandal of 2013. Things are much, much better than they were when the game was first released. Even after the day one patch, there's been another patch recently which has rebalanced the economy. Cars are much cheaper now, particularly the Le Mans cars that you will need for the latest stages of the career mode. There are seasonal events which are offering massive payouts, and there's now a consecutive login bonus, which means if you're about to go for a seasonal, it's often worth waiting and logging in a few times beforehand, and every single day you log in consecutively will boost the amount you can earn from these events. So some of the seasonal events, there's a couple coming out, each worth 6 million at the top end of this consecutive login boost. So those headline grabbing cars that cost 20 million credits in the game and would cost £120 in real life are now attainable through sort of normal play, or at the very least these seasonal events. And that's fantastic, because certainly one of my favourite cars was the XJ13, this Jaguar that caught a lot of the headlines when the microtransaction scandal came out. It's just a fantastic car, and I worked really hard to get hold of that car in GT5. It was the reward for an endurance race essentially, but a full-length Indy 500 style race, and it was a fantastic reward for completing that event, and one of the most fun cars to drive in the game. And what I really want to do is try it out with Gran Turismo 6's new handling model, and when the game first came out that looked like something I was never going to be able to achieve, and now it's actually attainable and it's worth the grind. The amount of grind is balanced out by the fact that it is an attainable target. I would definitely recommend the car that I'm using right now, which is the BMW Z4 GT3. The game's got a really, really healthy selection of GT3 cars, which is a really exciting series in real motorsport, very well subscribed, lots of great manufacturers in there such as Mercedes, BMW, Nissan, really, really sort of growing racing series, and Gran Turismo acknowledges that it's the series, or at least the class of car, that Kazunori Yamauchi drives himself in the Nürburgring 24 Hours, and it's really fantastic to see that in the career mode there's actually a full championship with 16 car grids, which feel very, very busy when you're out there racing, and a proper championship with a really healthy selection of these cars. But this one in particular is actually quite easy to handle comparatively. There's an Audi R8 in there, which is an absolute nightmare. I would stick with the BMW Z4, and that will carry you through quite a lot of the sort of upper echelons of the career mode. It's a really canny purchase, and particularly if you've got these seasonals, you should be able to get hold of one fairly quickly. In terms of the future of the game, we always take promises from developers with a bit of a pinch of salt, because you never know what's going to come out of the wash in terms of patches and downloadable updates, but certainly based on the declaration of intent, as it were, updating the game so soon after the release to address fan concerns and things like that, it feels like a safer bet than most that we'll see some really, really great stuff coming from Polyphony for GT6, both in terms of paid and patches. I would like to see full-length endurance races, because I'm a bit of a nerd for them, when B-Spec arrives, because that is coming and you will be able to swap out to a B-Spec driver, so having longer races does make sense in that context. There's Ayrton Senna content coming, which is enormously exciting. A racing simulation of this caliber having classic F1 machinery and stuff that is tied to probably the most beloved racing driver of all time is a fantastic piece of news, and I'm really, really excited to get more of this game. You know, I've really gorged myself on it, but I'm still like a kid at Christmas waiting for more stuff to come out, more things to drive, more stuff to play, so I'm really excited for that. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.